up by little or no fact whatsoever.
Yeah. Well,
Diane, did you read the William Cohen statement? It was printed in 1997. William Cohen, the Secretary of Defense.
He made a comment about the weather weaponry, right?
Yes. Do you remember he talked about making earthquakes?
Yes, yes.
That
Isn't
the
that
terrorists
nice?
now had the capability of causing and making earthquakes and setting off volcanoes.
But Griff,
anytime they wanted
surely our elected leaders would not use that against us, the people they work for. They love us so.
Well, Let me write that down.
yeah, that's a new one on me. I will say this, that speaking about the New Madrid Fault, I don't know if you saw this, Diane, but not too long ago, probably about a month or so ago, there was a news piece out about Yellowstone. What did they call it? It was breathing, meaning that the land, they saw a big spike in the land as far as it raising, and I'm not a geologist, so I mean I pretty much sound like a retard when it comes to this, but I will say that it's not just the New Madrid that it's happening to. It's happening all over the world with increased volcanic activity and seismic activity, and that, I think, while scalar is a weapon that the government can use, there's other things that are going on, such as pole shift and these cosmic forces that are acting on our planet that are also doing things. Now, when I hear people give a date, see, that's the problem that I have, is when people give a date. I don't put a lot of confidence in dates. Because where are they getting their information from? You know, John King was he's kind of spot on. March 15th. Well, where are you getting your information from? If it's as credible as they say it is, they'll put out a source. And on this show, we kind of we don't like to put things out unless we can back it up or verify it.
Right.
And I can't find anything that's credible or relevant to say that March 15th would be a date that the New Madrid Fault's going off. Now,
I know who said that, Joe.
Who said that?
I know where that came from. William Shakespeare, The Ides of March. That's what it is.
But did he really write it?
No, it was Edward de Vere that wrote it.
That's right.
Check that out, Diane. It's Edward de Vere.
I will check that out.
Go ahead.
The pole shift is something that, obviously that's yet another thing that's being hidden from us, and they're preparing for everything. And so that is, it will definitely affect each and every one of us.
We're going through a pole shift right now, and John King, I'll let you speak in just a second. But you need to make a distinction between what the two things are. There's pole shift, which is what we're in right now. That's why the poles are migrating, I think, at a rate of 40 miles a year towards Siberia, at least the North Pole. And then there's pole reversal, and the pole reversal is that catastrophic one where you have the north become the south and the south become north. So you have to differentiate between those two. Now, John King, you had something to add?
Yeah, Joe, you had mentioned about dates that you don't put a lot of credence into dates, and that struck me just a little bit. Is if you go back 20 minutes, you'll find that I called February 14th, 2011, and I put a date out there for people. And a lot of my dates have been relatively spot on. And the reason that is because I go out onto the web, not the mainstream media, and I read until my eyes bleed, and I filter through all the BS, and I look at all this information, and I begin to piece it together until a picture is formed. And the reason why I say that February 14th is the date that the line will be drawn in the sand, if you go to Drudge, you will see a story that says that the Mubarak, people that are against the Mubarak have vowed to step up the resistance. And there's going to be coming a time where the world leaders are going to have to step in, because this doesn't seem to be going away. It seems to be getting worse, and it's bound to spiral out of control. So I just threw the date out there for something to cling on to, or for the people to cling on to, but it's going to happen sooner or later, and I think sooner rather than later.
Yeah. I think we all feel like something, I mean, we've been having this heaviness over us for months now, and like any moment now, something. Because there's so many different horrible scenarios that could come true and likely will. So which will it be first, the economy or, there's so many to choose from. But
Right. I can't remember a time in my life, and Diane, thank you for the call. I can't remember a time in my life, Griff, and maybe you can speak to this a little bit, seeing as how your life experience kind of takes you out a little bit farther than mine. When in your lifetime has life been so chaotic?
It's never been like this, Joe.
I
never.
mean, even in the 50s with the Red Scare, the race riots of the 60s, the Vietnam War protests, all that kind of stuff, and it wasn't as hectic?
We've never had a president that was sabotaging the United States before. Not like this. This is blatant,
LBJ?
In your face.
LBJ?
Not like this.
Nixon?
No.
Doggone it, man. I'm reaching. You know that, right? I'm trying. But you're right. You're right. There never has been a time like this, and that was my point. In our nation's history, in the world history for that matter, I really don't see a time where we've had so much chaos on a global scale. Never before has, at least as far as I know and based on my research, never before has the Earth been as populated as it is now. Never before has it been subject to this level of technology and having that fragility be there, because God forbid that there's a nasty size solar flare or something like that takes us out. I mean, we've become so vulnerable, and I wonder, Griff, do you think technology at this point do you think it kind of works against you?
It's hard to talk about, Joe, because you have to understand what it was like, and there's no way for me to tell you what it was like because you have nothing to compare it with.
Well, compare things to when you grew up,
But yes, I could do that, and I could feel it, but I can't tell you because you have nothing to compare my words with. Back when I grew up in the 40s, it was exciting to make ice cream out of the crank freezer, and we made peach ice cream, and we would fight to see who turned the crank. Can you imagine doing that today?
Well, my kids do that. They fight over it.
It was an entirely different mindset.
Right,
the people. The people were together and they were one, but now we're not one. We're a bunch of different groups of people, all hateful and fighting over our independence and being offended and suing one another.
Right.
And sitting at the back of the bus and all of that stuff. All of it. And it is not a conducive atmosphere to live in anymore.
No, it's funny too because I get a lot of flack, a ton of flack from other family members or people even that coworkers, friends. It doesn't matter. To the fact that I moved out into the middle of nowhere, I homeschool my children, and I try to capture that. I'm trying to recreate the things that we've lost touch with, the simple things like making your own ice cream, doing that kind of stuff, Griff. I mean, people today may not think that that's so important. To me, it's incredibly important to actually pay attention and savor the simple things, savor those moments, and understand that all of this can be taken away in a flash, and then what do you have? And how do you survive? How do you survive if you don't know these important skills, these important things to do, if you don't have power, if you don't have running water, if you don't have all of the modern amenities? Then you want to know something? You're going to have a a big problem. One of the main reasons why my wife and I decided to homeschool the kids is simply because they don't teach you anything. Folks, think about this. Just think about it for a second. How much of the stuff that you learned in school do you actually apply in your everyday life? Griff, as a percentage, how much do you think you apply?
That you've learned in school?
That you learned in school.
I didn't learn anything in school. I learned everything after I finished school. School teaches you how to learn.
That's right.
And then you spend the rest of your life learning.
The important thing, and that's one thing that I try to tell everybody, the hardest thing to do is to get your child to learn how to learn. Because once they master that, everything else is gravy. It's all downhill from there. And that's the big thing with school. I actually did a little trend analysis on it because I'm a geek like that, and I figured out that just about half of my son's school day was devoted to nothing but garbage. I mean, 4 hours was pretty much, and I'm giving you generalization. I don't want to get into the decimals, but about 4 hours was dedicated to learning. 4 hours out of the day. You know how much learning happened after school? All the learning happened when he brought the homework home. Everything else he was doing in school was testing. He was testing to make some sort of state exam, or in this case it was the Virginia SOLs. You know, so the teachers would test all day or do whatever they got to do or teach to the test, and then they would come home and they would learn stuff. And my wife and I'd be sitting up with our son for 4 hours trying to teach him the stuff that he should be learning in class, but never did. You know, and half that stuff wasn't even important.
Joe, let me ask you, what are you teaching your children about World War II?
Right now, we're not really focusing on World War II. We're focusing.
It's not even in the history books in school.
No,
they took it out of the history books.
Yeah, oh yeah, I know. I'm not.
Why do you think they did that?
Well, because it was a war of what. I can't find the words. I want to say when you look back at a lot of the things that happened during World War II, it was very divisive. Does that make sense? Meaning that, you know, the damn Japs. And
what's wrong with that?
Well, for somebody like you in your day,
no, really,
there's nothing wrong with that.
You know, they left that out of the history book because of things like that.
Right. But now we're faced with the same type of scenarios.
Those little bastards killed over 2,500 men in one attack at Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. They dropped bombs on our soldiers. They blew up ships. It was an attack while their diplomats were sitting in Mr. Hull's outer office in Washington to meet to talk about peace.
How much of that do you think Roosevelt knew?
I talked to MacArthur's aide. I have really been blessed meeting people in my lifetime.
Oh, was that Jack Apple?
No, that wasn't Jack, but Jack was another one. It was Rome Landry was his name. He was a general, and he and I sat down and talked about MacArthur and Roosevelt. And I asked him that question: Did MacArthur and did he think that it was allowed to happen? That Roosevelt he had to get into the war, and he said yes. They felt that they allowed it to happen. They put a blockade around Japan and then allowed the attack.
Because
and that got us into the war.
Right. I mean, do you think that they'll actually? So who has the blood on their hands? That's the question.
I don't know. It gets so complicated. There is no right or wrong. There is no black and white. It's 1,000 shades of gray.
Right.
If Jesus came back today and he tried to administrate a government, somebody would drop a bomb on him. And you can't manage a government or protect people by being honest in today's world. If you're surrounded by thieves, don't you have to use some of their tactics in order to survive and help your people survive.
I've always said that, Griff. You know, one thing that that's very interesting is we go in and we fight these illegal wars. You know, we haven't had a